Before we begin, the name of the show is Turn This Off. Frankly, we thought it would be good for marketing and at the same time make us sound kind of cool. Now, having said that, if you're part of the 5% of people wanting the same drab, boring, sleep-inducing content, by all means, yes, turn it off. This is Turn This Off. We're all about the journey, the struggles, and the triumphs. If it's great people doing great things, we're talking to them. It's your ticket to discovering the untold stories, the hidden gems, and the voices that deserve to be heard. Turn off the mundane and turn on the extraordinary. Turn this off. And now your host, Jordan Pauly.
All right, here we are, episode 7 with Amy Tobin. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. I feel honored to be on lucky number 7.
There you go. So Amy and I met, was it a year ago now?
You know, just about a year on the nose, actually. Yeah.
So former guest who was on, Nick Dew, had introduced us early on.
Yep.
And we had some great conversations. We had coffee together. Again, I think organically we just had some amazing conversations. And I'm like, oh, Amy has so much to offer. You know, what you've offered me in regards to advice or whatever it is. Have Amy on. Like, you've done so much. So I will let you set some of the context, but I'm going to set you up a little bit. So
okay.
Amy is a mentor. She's a previous radio host. She's written a book. She's a public speaker. She owns her own company. She's an entrepreneur. She's all of these wonderful, fascinating things. So excited to dive into that today and touch on some of the subjects.
Thank
I will
you.
say, yeah, I'll let you set yourself up as well too. So if there's additional context you want to add there, you know, I've known you maybe a little bit lower than the surface level for, I'd say, about a year.
Yep.
But let our audience know kind of, you know, maybe your story in a nutshell, if you can.
Boy,
The elevator
my
pitch.
story does not lend itself to a nutshell. But you summed up a lot of it. I mean, I think I'm definitely a serial entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere I got pigeonholed, if you will, in culinary, which was great. It should be. I had cooking schools, 3 of them. I did a really experiential, cutting-edge thing with Procter and Gamble, so that kind of squarely put me in it, didn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, food is definitely a big part of my life. I do recipe development and web content for some pretty big food brands.
Mm-hmm.
So food is me. But in there also is sort of this, I've always been a leader. I've always led teams. I just thrive on building people and having them understand the edges of their capabilities. And I do that via food with some people, teach them how to cook, teach them how to have confidence to entertain or follow a menu or a recipe. But I also do it with people that work for and with me so that they can push themselves to the edge of their limits.
Yeah.
And somewhere it's all wrapped up. I've really got to work on that elevator speech,
No,
I
it's
think.
great. You wear a lot of hats, and
Definitely.
I would say I'm excited. As you're speaking, I'm getting like goosebumps, and I'm over here excited. I'm like, I can't wait for Amy to build into me. Like, I'm ready. So again, the
Watch
conversation.
out, don't ask for it. You might just get it.
I want it. I think that it's good for, selfishly for me. Like, I'm excited about the conversation. I think people listening as well could garner something from that. So there's definitely a selfish intent here in this conversation.
Aw, well, that means a lot to me. Thank you. I feel like the day we met, I sort of had the same feeling about you, though. So maybe this will be a little give and take.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm also, you do have a voice for radio, right? And I'm sure you've been told that. And you had a radio show on Q102, correct?
Yeah, almost 20 years. It was the funniest thing how that even everything I've ever done, I have to tell you, Jordan, I've fallen into.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somebody who's a little more philosophic might disagree with that statement, but I had a cooking school. And the Party Source wanted me to do some lifestyle tips on the radio for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I did them on, I think it was WGRR. It was the Hubbard Radio Now, though, group.
Sure.
And so I would record these little commercials talking about how to pair wine and stuff every week. And it was fun. It was my first time on the radio. I learned how to, sort of read a script and all of that. And one day, the Well, I'm going to kind of tell this out of context. The party source called me in, and I thought, oh no, they hate my commercials. And in truth, they said, we'd like to build you a cooking school. So I was like, well, that was some time well spent. Well, at the same time, another radio group had heard my commercials and invited me in to talk about a radio show. So I was supposed to go over to AM, where most talk radio happens. And I went into the folks at Hubbard and I said, I've been like offered a radio show, but you guys have been so great. I imagine you won't want to see me anymore, but thank you for this fun experience. And they called me in the next day and said, actually, we'd like you to stay here. So all of these things just
this
sort
was
of
on
happened.
FM. This was Q102.
Yeah, and at
which
the
is
time, they're only talk radio, and I was there nearly 20 years.
That's crazy.
That's
And
like
for
dinosaur
context,
years.
FM's, I don't know in regards to radio, I'd assume that's a big deal when I think about just frequencies and where I listen to things, unless I'm going to listen to maybe a sports game on WLW or is it WLW? 500?
Yes, I get
or
confused about
700.
AM because I
Same.
don't really listen to it.
Right. So that's, I guess
My
that's my
apologies.
point, is being on FM such a big deal.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And it was great to then be able to go over to the Jeff and Jen show. I was on that once a week, and I still love those guys. What a great group and what a great experience. And I met so many amazing people. And of course, that started as a culinary cooking show. You know, let me tell you how to cook. Let me interview cookbook authors. Let's talk about lifestyle and things about the home. But I started getting more pitches that were broader, and I was interested in the broader topics. I mean, let's face it, none of us have one-track minds, right? It's like, oh, I like this business tip. Oh, I like this leadership. Oh, I like this financial stuff. And it started sort of expanding. And I think that's when I realized that I'm a lot more than food, you know. In between meals, I do other things.
Sure.
And so it sort of blossomed from there. And I had the chance to interview some amazing people. I mean, whatever trouble she got herself into later, Paula Dean from the Food Network was
Really?
one of the best guests I've ever had on my show.
That was going to be one of my questions.
Unbelievable. She prepared, she was generous, she did photo ops, she poured her heart and soul into the interview. I believe, despite her stumbles, you know, that she really was the consummate professional. Guy Fieri, the same thing. Incredible guest, so generous. Tried to get me to do the next Food Network star, and I was like, no, thank you.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, no, Guy, I'm not doing that. But I mean, so some really cool people in the food world. Thomas Keller. He was one of the best ever guests. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
I'm not, but I'm not a good judge of that. Like, you shouldn't, most people will be. I'm not.
They will. He's a big deal. The French Laundry, per se. He's the consummate restaurateur. And, you know, I'll tell you, here I go. I'm talking too much. You're going to have to cut me off, Jordan.
I love it. That's the intent of this, right?
Thomas Keller informed a lot of how I would speak to my team about how I wanted us to do events, cooking classes, anything that we did that was to the public. He believes that hospitality begins when you pick up the phone. When someone calls his restaurant and tries to get in and they tell them you can come in a year.
Yeah, it's all the experience, right?
It's the experience. From all the way through dinner, greeting, the restroom, taking your coat, the menus, every little bit, including, of course, the food, to after and how they feel when they leave. And that used to be one of my training points with my team is, look, we're selling how they feel when they walk out the door. Really, that's what we're feeling. That moment, guys, focus on how they feel when they leave. Well, that's really kind of true in anything about branding and marketing, right? You're selling more than every interaction with whatever it is you're selling is the user experience. Yeah. And so that was really, I think, a pretty big eye opener for a lot of people that I worked with in the hospitality world. And so it's funny how there was this intersection between food, marketing, hospitality, business, leadership. It's all, at least I look for, the connections, and they're everywhere.
I mean, it's great that you realize that, right? Because I mean, I think you also have to have this, like, outside moment where you're realizing that there's connections between something very specific, like running a restaurant, to how it applies to brand and marketing, to how it applies to just life in general. Because what you're describing to me as a kind of a through and through marketer, that's like the customer journey, right? It's when you think about the customer journey, it's all from awareness, consideration, intent, all the way down to adoption. And the whole time you're trying to customize, personalize that experience to get that person to take that action to do the thing. And then when you think about the end of it, right, you go and you buy the thing. Now there's loyalty programs, right? How do you get to be a return customer? So again, like what you just described with, that the food or the restaurant experience directly applies to marketing. I think probably a lot of things.
A lot of things. You're so right. I mean, you said it more eloquently than I did, but that's exactly right. And each step is tender. So that's what I used to say to my team too, is don't lose them anywhere.
Right.
You cannot like, hello, and welcome them with all this love and then drop them like a hot potato. It's got to stay consistent, and you've got to be with them. And
especially nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Consumers have so many options, regardless of what it is, whether it's a phone you want to buy, a piece of technology, where you shop or spend your money. There's so many options out there now where there weren't before, that if I have a bad experience one place, I've got a ton of options over here. See you later.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that's where I think, regardless of what I'm doing, there's a lot of relationship building in it. And I've been proud of the relationships that my teams and I have built with people and other businesses and things like that. Because at the end of the day, you do business with people you like, people you want to be with, and, that sort of thing. But I have to sort of wrap on my Thomas Keller story. There's a phrase in cooking called mise en place, and you've probably heard it. Some people refer to it as mess in place. It's getting your prep done. It's being prepared. You have the sauces for the evening already made. You have everything chopped and diced and weighed and portioned, and you have the cookware that you need, et cetera. And Thomas Keller talks about the fact that mise en place leaves the kitchen with him. It doesn't just stay there. And he gives this great example of, for example, I'm going to a ball game. And he'll say, okay, I make sure I've got my tickets. Yep, got my tickets. Do I have shoes that are comfortable, look good, but they're not so nice that if I spill beer on them, it's going to be a problem? Do I have a jacket in case it gets cold? And he really thinks it all through. And it's another one of those things that it's like everything has this sort of formula.
Yeah.
That I think if we kept drilling down and down and down, it's interchangeable in so many elements of life.
It seems like a great framing mechanism, right? How to frame something, whatever that is.
Yes.
Through mise en place?
Mise en place.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. When I was at Toyota, they had something similar. They called it Genji Genbutsu, which is go and see, but it's kind of a framework of how you approach problem solving, interacting with different people on the supply chain. I could go way far down the road here, but I guess Toyota has, when I was there, a lot of great framing mechanisms that I still have with me today, right? How to problem solve. The Toyota business problem solving, the way to look at a problem is called a TBP. Again, a framing mechanism, but I find in my everyday world, I'm looking at something and I'm running it through this Toyota framing mechanism. What's the current situation? What's the ideal situation? What's the gap? What's the root cause analysis? What's the countermeasure plan, right? Like, again, I didn't mean to go there, but as far as a framing mechanism, another example of one, and that sounds like what this is, which are super helpful.
That'll inform your parenting in some way. You're not going to go that far down the road with your kids, but you're right. And they'll look at you kind of glazed. Yeah. But, there's some of that you're going to teach your kids. Mm-hmm. And there's some of that that's going to make your life easier. And there's some of it, we just pick up these things wherever we go that I think are so valuable. Yeah. Another radio guest that I had that had nothing to do with food was Wayne Dyer. Do you know who he is?
Amy,
I'm throwing some stuff at you.
I'm not a good. Most people, I'll say again, I'm sure most people will.
They might not, but those who do know who he is, he was a big damn deal. And he wrote a book called Manifest Your Destiny.
Okay.
And a friend gave it to me a long time ago, and it rocked my world. I mean, it rocked my world. Mm-hmm. And it was an old book when it was given to me.
His manifestation is completely coming back around.
Oh yeah,
on the socials and everything.
I don't think it ever left.
Yeah,
but
it's being. I'm seeing it more and more. So maybe I have heard of this.
Yeah.
And just
You
not-
should read the
not
book,
known.
quite
Okay.
frankly, because he's kind of the daddy of it all.
Okay.
But he is amazing, and the book was amazing. And, you know, there's a handful of books that have really changed my life, and that's one of them. And I thought to myself, I'm going to try and get Wayne on my show. I'm going to try and get Wayne on my show.
You're manifesting it.
Well, that's what I said to him when he got on the phone. I said, Wayne, I manifested you. But I have to tell you, I felt I was a pretty good interviewer, and a lot of my guests would give me that feedback. But the minute he came on the phone with me, I felt like that skit from Saturday Night Live where Chris Farley looks at Paul McCartney and goes, remember when you were a Beatle? It's like, how do I talk to this man about this massive concept in 12 minutes
Yeah,
on a
intimidating.
lifestyle radio show? Yeah. And he was so generous and so great. But to this day, I think it was my worst interview
I
with
doubt
my
it.
biggest idol.
No. Again, we talked about this before. You're trying to pack something very heavy that needs additional context and additional
Absolute-
time to set up
Right.
and more time to go into 12 minutes. That's not fair to critique yourself on that. It's such a big topic. So
Well, I was still delighted to have him on,
Yeah.
but it was too much for too short a time.
yeah. So in May you spoke at an event, correct?
Yes.
Power to Pursue, is that what it's called? And it was at Music Hall here in Cincinnati.
Yep.
So talk to me about that event and then kind of the topic. I believe it was called Lifequake, right?
It
The
was.
topic that you spoke on.
Yes. So Power to Pursue is put on by Rachel DeRochers. If you don't know her, she would be so great on your podcast. I adore Rachel.
Maybe you can make an introduction.
There
That'd be
you
great.
go. Yeah. Way back when, she was the marketing director at Wild Oats,
Okay.
which was the precursor to Whole Foods. And she sponsored my column in Cincinnati Magazine. I used to write a couple of columns for Cincinnati Magazine. And we got to know each other, and it was great. She left Wild Oats. She created a company called Grateful Grams, which she's since closed. But Rachel is a force to be reckoned with. Anyway, she asked me if I would be on this panel called Life 2.0 with a group of other women, some very cool women. And I said, of course, I'd love to. And I was trying to sort of put together my few minutes that I had to talk in between being asked questions. And I summed it up with a phrase that came from a guy named Bruce Feiler. And he's an author, and he wrote a bunch of books. But the one that I ended up meeting him through was his book called Council of Dads. We can come back to that if there's time. But he coined this phrase, lifequakes. And so I sort of held together my topic by calling it a lifequake, and it took off. The phrase took off. It was fun. I was pretty touched that many people were referring to lifequakes afterwards. But all of us, as you well know, as anyone listening knows, have lifequakes. And some of them, here's a phrase I coined, are just little life tremors. You know, oh boy, things that happen that kind of set you back for a minute or rock your world for a minute, but you dust yourself off and go on. But then we have these really big ones, and they can be anything from the birth of a child, a marriage, a new job, a move, or they can be you leave a spouse, you're cheated on, you get a terrible medical diagnosis, you're fired. You know, things happen that rock your world in a very intense way. And so Life 2.0 seemed a perfect time to talk about these lifequakes. And I've had a ton of them. I mentioned to you earlier that I had a cooking school at Procter & Gamble. That made news. Anything Procter & Gamble does in this town makes news.
Sure.
And this was really different. It was at the very beginning of the swelling of the Food Network, and it was a multi-million-dollar build-out in the Rookwood Commons, and it was one of the most amazing places ever and something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. It was actually a brand activation for Crisco.
Really?
So this was a line of oils and spices that Crisco created, and the cooking classes that I wrote and executed were to support the product. Well, they sold Crisco, but they couldn't sell the school. So they ended up saying to me, "This is your baby. Do you want to buy it?" And I was like, Well, that alone was a life quake, that conversation. And in the end, I and another investor bought it. So when we closed it, because I bought it with my heart, not my head, and that's another conversation, it made the New York Times, or in the Wall Street Journal, I'm sorry. Never did I expect to be mentioned in the Wall Street Journal because I had a failure of I was just devastated. I felt humiliated. I felt people in town were like, what happened? Why is it shuttered? It was really, really difficult. And that was a major life quake. I remember we were watching the news. My husband and my kids were very little, and I were all on the bed watching the news. And John Matarese is "Don't waste your money," talking about we can't find Tobin, who's got these gift certificates for her school that closed. And I remember thinking, John Matarese, she's right here holding her babies, doing her best. It was like, it was really, really hard. That life quake was my first attempt at how do you overcome a public ouch, a public failure. And I am a far better person after that life quake than I would be had I never had my world rocked like that. And my next successes in business, I was rocketed forward, which never would have happened without the courage and all of that from this life quake. So
Forget this person, right?
Yeah.
As you're saying this, I don't know. There's people who take risks and they win, and there's people who take risks and they don't. But you're taking the risk opposed to sitting on the sideline. It's so easy to be a critic nowadays. It's so easy to be an internet troll and to sit by and write things in the comments and not put skin in the game for anything. So to your point, I commend you for that. I really do.
Thank you.
Again, similarly, it's interesting. Anything in life that seems like a setback at the time ends up being a huge blessing or a huge learning, right? So
every problem comes bearing a gift.
That's right. Yeah. It makes me mad at that person. Yeah.
Well,
that made you feel that way. Because again, it's just so easy to be a critic, right?
It is. But it's almost like the world is full of them, to your point, Jordan. And I found myself thinking, so what am I going to do? Am I going to hide in my house the rest of my life? Am I done for? And I remember the first time I went to the grocery store after all of this, nobody threw something at me. No one shouted from a car. And I also started to realize I was having a bit of that spotlight effect. You know what I mean? That I thought everyone was looking at me.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't even know it happened. Do you know what I mean? But that was a life quake. Well, a few more happened after that, and they happened for everyone about every 5 years. Don't mark your calendar. It's not that consistent. But it's you have, about every 5 years in your life, some kind of a life quake. And some are glorious. All of them, though, I promise you, come with something better on the other side, as long as you don't fold.
Right. Or
As long as you don't fold. And so that was what my story was. And I have some strategies, but I feel like I'm talking so much. Do you want me to?
You're not. You can keep going. What's interesting you touched on before, and I've been reading a lot of it lately. I'm obsessed with TikTok. I'm on there all the time. It can be mindless at times, but for me, there's a lot of good thought leaders on there, or just people with interesting perspectives. So I'm not necessarily on there for some of the goofy stuff.
Right.
It's more this. I'm reading a lot of stoicism and a lot of things that can just build into me. But you mentioned before the spotlight effect, and I feel that quite often. And I'll butcher this, but basically somebody quoted or said, I'm sure somewhere in time, but I keep seeing it over and over again, is basically the idea of what you said. You think people are thinking about you, or that they have this opinion of you, but everybody's wrapped up in their own world. Everybody has their own problem. Everybody's going through something. So as I'm sitting in work and I'm thinking about this person doesn't like me, or they don't like the strategy, or they don't like the thing, chances are they're not thinking about it at all. They might think about it for a second, but here I am in my mind playing it over and over again, and I'm letting it stress me out. And at the end of the day, that person's not thinking about it. So I've been really working on this approach of just really stopping. I'm not giving a you-know-what anymore. And not a bad way. Not that I'm not putting the effort in.
I understand.
But I'm really trying not to be concerned with what people think. And if they want to think that, fine. I'm not going to let that take the energy from me. right? I've got enough energy and stress in other parts of my life with kids and this, that, and another. I won't let you steal that from me.
That is so important. And if one person listening picks up on that, and to me, that's what I found about this idea of liking to lift and build and show people what they're capable of, is a lot of times somebody hears something in the simplest thing you've said, or you're willing to be vulnerable enough to share that, and you can change their life.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty powerful.
It is powerful. And you know, I think to me, the most important thing I would say when you have a life quake, the very first thing, and I used to always say this to my daughter, and I never thought she was listening until she wrote a paper on it in high school, and I think I wept for a week, but is think of yourself when something really intense happens in your life, that you've been just plopped in the middle of a lake. Just plopped.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a choice. You can splash, you can thrash, and you can practically or perhaps actually drown. Or you can just go, okay, where's the shore? Where's the shore? And just swim there.
Mm-hmm.
Get your ass to shore.
Right.
Shake off, sit in the sun for a minute, dry off, and just be still. Take stock. That's the first thing to do whenever anything happens. Find your shore and get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then really, you know, next step is you got to think about everything that just happened. Let's say it's a job loss. Let's say it's the loss of a family member, a marriage, a friendship, whatever it might be. You have to think about everything. And this is the hardest part. But I've got to tell you, I've done it, and it really works. Mm-hmm. It really works. Think into all the worst case scenarios. Every worst, oh my God, if it's a job, I could lose my house. I could lose my car. I could live on the street. I could never eat again. I could die in a corner. You know, don't leave anything out. Think of it all. If it's a marriage or a friendship or whatever, you know, I'll be alone forever. No one will ever date. Just go all the way through it. Feel it all. Don't leave anything out. Because if you do, it's waiting in the corners for you as you try and go forward.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
It really is important. And the other thing to recognize is, what is your track record so far? 100% success, right? We're sitting here. You've made it this far. So why doubt yourself now? And then I think when you start to put yourself back together, whether it be a new job, a new relationship, a new whatever it might be, don't limit yourself. A lot of times people don't want to get their hopes up. You know, what I'd really like to do, but I don't want to get my hopes up. Why not? Mm-hmm. I mean, what is the worst case? You get your hopes dashed. Right. But it goes back to what you said earlier. You know, you miss every shot you don't take, right? So it's like, get your hopes up. Idealize your ideal life, your ideal circumstances. And from there is when you rebuild. So calm, feel it, envision it, and then you're ready to go again.
Yeah. I think that's so important too, to feel it, and something that, and I don't know if it's culturally or what, but I will say, as a man, right? I'll just speak from this point. You're almost told not to feel your feelings.
Yes.
And I've worked through that myself. And I'm like, no, I'm allowed to feel my feelings. So I would say I have gone to that place, and it's a very weird place to be in, because it can get dark, right? It gets very, very emotional, depressing, all these things. But to your point, I think it's important to work, and I'm still working through some of those things. So I won't pretend I have it all figured out.
Oh, me either. None of us do.
But I think it is important to work through those things. Just get it all out on the table, right? So then you can move forward from it, and there's no surprises as you're moving forward. I think I love that. I'm living that. So
that's good.
I also like the analogy you have around, you know, swimming to shore. There's one. Oh, what's this quote? I love water and boat analogies. There's something about, I've got a tattoo of a boat on my arm. There's something about the sea and the journey and all these analogies. But there's one, and this isn't as related to maybe a life quake, but what is it? If the boat isn't coming in, swim out to it. And that's more about opportunity, right? But I'm just hearkening on kind of your analogy between the water and swimming to shore. And I love this quote, this kind of mantra right now. It's like, if the boat's not coming in, AKA if the opportunity's not coming in, swim out to the boat.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all you. At the end of the day, it's all you. It's all me. It's all everybody listening. It's what you choose to do. And nobody said it was easy, but everybody says it's worth it. And, when you talk about the boat and the water analogies, quotes are my jam. I don't know why I love them so much.
Love them too. I had one of my questions for you was mantras or quotes, so we can get into that. Like what?
Well, gosh. So again, I got more to that story. About 10 years ago, I started texting my kids every morning. My son got a job where he was, forgive us, Carbondale, Illinois, moved to Carbondale, Illinois, and he just wasn't feeling it. He felt very isolated there and didn't love it, and I was far away. And so I was trying to send him a quote every morning, and I included my daughter in it to give him a good thought to start the day. I think whatever you put in your brain is critical, right? So I started sending texts, and I thought, well, I don't want them to think these are like texts that I've got something other to say to them other than I want to tell you something good. So I started calling them Mom's Daily Wisdom. I wish I had come up with a better name than that, but that's what it was. And through the years, that got shortened to MDW. And I have sent them, are you ready for this? 3,937 quotes.
Really?
I'm almost to 4,000. And they're every day. And they have become a thing with us. And it's just, parenting adult children is way different than what you're doing with little ones. But you still have a place, to guide without pushing. And this is my way to stay connected, but also it's the biggest gift I can think of to give them is to start their day with something. Occasionally it's a little, hey guys, but mostly it's a think good thoughts. And that's what I'm turning into a book.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And I'm really excited about it. But so some favorite quotes for me, one is you talked about earlier, every problem comes bearing a gift. This is just the damn truth. And it's like, sometimes if people would just realize that these wisdoms have been coming around for, since cave drawing, right? These are not BS. These are real. Every problem comes bearing a gift. Might be a traffic jam you're stuck in. You miss an accident. Okay, that's a little woo-woo. But it's also you lose a job, but a better one comes along. It could be you move to a different neighborhood, but there you get all these great new opportunities or friendships. Every problem comes bearing a gift. So that's a little bit of my mantra. But in terms of favorite quotes, well, I've got 3,997 of them. So it would be pretty hard to pick. But what I like about them is they distill down like so much wisdom in so few words.
It's incredible, right? It
is.
I forget who I was talking about it. It might have been somebody was on last week. But quotes for me or songs, a person is able to put into words what I'm feeling that I can't express myself.
Right.
And in a way that's so like, oh man, how did I come up with that on my own? But it's so articulate and so refined, a quote or a poem or a song.
Agreed.
And it's cathartic when you're in that or you read it because you feel understood and you feel seen. And so, I'm like living on quotes right now by Marcus Aurelius and all these stoicism, all
guys.
These just feel good, like get up off your tush and do something.
Yep, I love them. When you talk about the water and the sea, there's one, and I'm not going to remember who to attribute it to, but what you need to do is not teach a man to sail, but teach him to love the sea. I love that one too. Or, the goal is not to read more books. The goal is to become a reader.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that it distills down a big idea into something very, tight. And I really like that.
There's another one. This was on TikTok, and I forget. Somebody else said this. Whoever said this, thank you. But it's the idea of burning the boats, right? So if you imagine the Viking era, right? They're going to conquer some land or some people. They would ideally burn the boats. So basically, you're saying there's no turning back. Right. It's victory or death. And that's a little, like, it can get a little dark, but the idea is if you burn the boats and you don't have any other option, you have to move forward. And that's kind of where I'm living my life right now, too. I'm like, I'm going to burn these boats and I'm not going to look back. And it's either I make this thing happen or not, but there's no turning back. So I'm trying to burn boats right now. You're supposed to not burn bridges.
No, but you want that intensity of that quote. That's why it's so perfect with what you're thinking. It's like, I'm all in. I'm all in. And that quick, easy way to tell yourself, burn the boats is like, it adds to your intensity and adds to your drive and your vision. I love things like that.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. They not only tighten an idea, they tighten an emotion, and they can often cause us to act. And I just think that's a beautiful thing. I love Burn the Boats. I'm gonna have to look at that one a little bit more too.
It's very interesting. Again, I'll wake up to these things, and I'll go into like TikTok or Instagram with reels, and I'll just save all of these things under a folder called motivation. And whether it's David Goggins or somebody else, and I'm just, when I'm not feeling it or I need to feel it, I need a little motivation, I'll jump into these things and just listen. And of course, they've got great music in the background of all these 30-second clips. And I feel like I could run through a brick wall. Like I'll go out and, talk to my wife, and she's like, okay, like it's only 8 o'clock in the morning, calm down. Like, but that's, again, I love it.
I love it. You're putting a little bit more of a masculine spin on it than, a lot of what I do. Like I could run through a brick wall, but I love that. I was telling somebody the other day that I like to watch The Amazing Race. It's so crazy. I don't know why. And I actually ended up going on to Paramount, and I'm watching it from season 1. Let me tell you, they said some stuff that would not be said anymore. I was surprised. I'm like, God, how times have changed. But anyway, I was saying to my kids that one of the coolest things you see is there's always something really terrifying they have to do. Bungee jumping, diving off a building, whatever it might be. There's always something terrifying. And there's always pretty much more than half the group is terrified. You can see it in their eyes. And if it weren't for the $1 million in the television cameras, they would have walked away, right? Yeah. And then their faces when they did it, that split second, I swear to God, I'm embarrassed to tell you, Jordan, I have rewound to see it more than once because I get such a thrill out of it. That liberation. Oh my God, I did it. I burnt the boat. I could run through a brick wall. They've got that on their face. And I just love that so much. And I think that's part of what I try to do in my work. I mean, am I saying I'm a motivational speaker? Maybe I am. I don't know. But is whether it be you're burning the boat or whether it's I know how to cook Christmas dinner and I can do it. Whether it's, I know how to feed my family every day and we don't have to eat junk. That's part of it. But it's like, I love this sense of people understanding what it takes. And sometimes it's not very much to live in that pumped up state. I love that pumped up state so much.
I do too. And I find it's hard to get in that state. When I'm in it, and I shouldn't say it's hard. It's normal for me to be in a state of, even Steven, like everything's just, I'm just cruising, everything's good. So I have to get myself in that state or else I just accept things for what they are. I just accept the status quo of, oh, this is my life. This is my job. This is what I got going on. So I need to pull myself out of it sometimes. And again, those like that motivation. And to your point, the feeling afterwards, and I can't say that I've had it a ton of times, but when you do have it or you have it enough, and like right now in my life, I know this is selfish Jordan conversation, but I've faced adversity. I've done those things. I've always come out on the other side of it with a win or with something even better. It's like I'm at a point right now where I'm excited because I've been through it before. I know how it works. And you were mentioning, sending some quotes to your kids, whatever. I think that comes with experience and that you've experienced some things that you want to share with your kids, that wisdom,
right?
Whether it's through a quote or, through you just talking with them about your life experiences. And I don't know if that necessarily when my parents talked to me, if that landed with me when I was young. Part of it was just my parents being parents. But once you experience and you go through it, you're like, oh, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, that's why my parents did that. That's why my dad said this. That's why, this is what he was talking about.
Oh, God, don't you wish that we knew it when we were young? Yeah. All I did was sass my parents back. You said something, though, that I think is so wonderful. And that's what I hope somebody listening today hears. You said, I've been through adversity. I've been through tough stuff, and I always come out with a win. That only comes after you've done it. You've got the experience. Now you know it. And until you have had, that's why don't shy away. You know, you gotta take some lumps. You've just got to in order to have that confidence that you have and just stated, I've been through it. I've come out with wins. It's like, get there and imagine the comfort and the sleeping you can do at night and the paying full attention to your kids. Cause you know, you got this, you know, I think that is a really amazing thing. And I'm not happy that you had to go through some stuff, but I'm happy you're here to talk about it.
But again, a lot of it too, and I will say is a lot of them are first world problems, right? It's not like,
right.
I mean, sure, I broke some bones and had some setbacks physically, but none of what I haven't had to experience real hardship. What I might be talking about is like the loss of a job or a career change, those things. So I will admit that people have probably faced real hardships. My hardships are just of myself, right? They're my world and they're my hardships. But yeah, again, I'm realizing that, and I've realized this, life is finite. I know for a fact when I'm in my deathbed, if I don't try to do the thing or scratch the itch or try the thing that I want to do, whatever that looks like, if I don't want to go live for myself, I will have so much regret. I know I will. And I don't have much regret, but I know that I will if I don't. So I know that about myself. I'm like, wow, well, I'm going to try to do that thing because I don't want to have that regret. I'd rather be in my deathbed being like, damn, I tried. I gave it my best.
I burned all the boats.
Right. I burned every boat. So I'm in a very crazy place right now. I don't mean to make it about me, but it's awesome. It's exciting.
But I love hearing that because what you're saying is so true. I mean, underneath it all, my experience as a mother and a woman, as opposed to you being a father and a man, are different but the same. You know, when you come down to it, we're all the same, right? If you peel us like grapes, we're the same. But it's in the human condition, we're all the same. And a lot of this is advice that applies to all. Yes, it has to be tweaked to your circumstances. If you've got a 6-month-old, this is not the time to decide you're going to hit the road as a circus performer or whatever it might be. You got to obviously temper it with common sense. But everybody should live a life that does not have them on their deathbed feeling regret.
Yeah.
You got one shot.
Right.
You know? I love Eminem, by the way, but truly that song is so great. But you know, it's like you've got one shot and what do you really have to lose? As long as you're not reckless, as long as you're carefully and curating which boats you burn, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a good thing.
Yeah. Talk to me about this book you're writing. This will be
my second book. Yes.
Right?
My first one was a cookbook called Amy's Table, Food for Family and Friends. And that was a lovely book. It's still on Amazon. And while the photographs are a little dated,
I saw it.
Yeah, it's the recipes have held up.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of that, actually.
How do you write a book? I mean, let's even let's dig into this a little bit. If I'm someone who wants to write a book, or I just think of the friction or the barriers or the unknowns of a process of writing, of publishing, of distribution. And I'm sure it's easier now today than it was 30 years ago or whatever, but to walk me through that process of writing a book, getting it published, all the things.
Well, the first book that I wrote actually bears a lot of similarity to this one that I'm working on in that I had a lot of content. You know, as being a culinary director for over 20 years, how many recipes do you think I had? And I also had feedback and data from students to gauge which were the most popular. And I could see which sold out classes. So it helped me to, edit the book and put the right things in. My big stopper with my cookbook was photography, which was going to cost more than anything else because I insisted that every recipe have a beautiful photograph.
Oh yeah.
Not edited. We didn't, there's no BS in my photos. They were legit. But I was like, oh my God, where am I going to come up with this? And as luck would have it, Ryan Kurtz, who is a local photographer, was someone I had worked with at Cincinnati Magazine. And he is very well respected. I didn't even approach him because I thought, I can't afford Ryan. Mm-hmm. And he heard through the grapevine that I was doing a book, and he called me and he said, my feelings are hurt. What's going on? I said, Ryan, I can't afford you. And he said, well, guess what? I went freelance yesterday. Yes, you can. I need a cookbook in my,
Portfolio.
portfolio. So Ryan did my photography. And to this day, I can't even believe how lucky I am. And I went with a local company, Orange Fraser Press.
Okay.
And they made that part easy. This time, it's a little different. My cookbook, I had all the proceeds go to Komen for the Cure. I lost my mom to breast cancer, and I thought, this is my sort of little legacy project. So I made not a penny on that book, which also made it kind of nice for me because at that time I had a lot going on in media, and people would ask me to come do things, and it allowed me to focus by saying, actually, I only donate my time to anything that benefits Komen for the Cure. So if you'd like me to do that, you have to make a donation. So it made life easy. This book, I fully intend to monetize. And I've been working with a literary consultant who's going to get me with the right publisher. Interestingly, James Clear, do you know who he is? Atomic Habits?
I know Atomic Habits.
That James Clear, I had him on my show.
Did you really?
That's why I said I don't want to get too pigeonholed with food because I've got a lot of interests. James Clear worked with a group of people that were with, I think, Penguin.
Okay.
And they've created a new company that allows writers to publish in a whole new way. And I'll find the link and send it to you.
Okay.
And what's cool is for me, I'm not a full-time writer. I'm not waiting to pay my mortgage based on this book. And so I can work very well in the parameters that they've got going. I don't know for sure that that's who I'm going to use. The woman that is consulting with me has ghostwritten and helped get to publication hundreds of books. So I'm following her advice. So I don't know the publisher yet. But interesting thing about this, I've been writing it every day for 10 years, but only for a few minutes a day. And when I had all of these quotes, I really didn't know, a book of quotes seems very old-fashioned,
I don't know. I would like it, right? We just talked about it.
Yeah, but it's
Like
going to be a
kitchen soup for
daily
the soul,
reader. Well,
like
that's it. And you want to know the truth? That's my goal, that's who I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I remember my mom would have those, the calendars on the toilet, right? They had or by the sink, but there was the daily calendar where you'd rip off or fold back the daily quote. And
So mine is going to have a digital element, obviously, because of the world we're in now, but it would also be a book. But between you and me, that's who I'm gunning after. At some point, I hope to burn the boats behind me, and I want that to be where I go because I've been counseled that this is going to be a daily reader. But I already told you the math, how many quotes I have, and you know how many days a week there of the year. So it looks like actually I've got a decade's worth lined up, doesn't it?
there you go. You got volume 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
So what has changed is I don't want to just put out the quotes. So I'm going to, and I am, writing my thoughts beyond each quote.
Okay, like expanding on it.
Exactly. And I am digging it. And it's funny, when she first told me I had to do that, I wrote like 4 lines, and I don't know, I felt like I was co-opting the quote or something. And as days have gone on, the writer in me has come out. And I mean, it is just coming out of me every morning. And here's the thing, Jordan, I wake up just revved to do it. I do it with my coffee in the morning. You and I talked this morning.
Yeah.
I had been writing coffee cup number 1. I needed to get on to cup number 2, but I had been writing. I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to open my eyes and do it. And not that our work can be that every day, but come on, it should be a better percentage of the time. You should be excited about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, even say, I mean, you've got your full-time business going, and this is, I don't want to call it a side thing because it very much is you're doing it every day, but I guess too, you can have hobbies, right? Like this for me is a hobby that I enjoy, that I'm like oozing into versus like the 9 to 5 thing. So I think you can have both, you can have the 9 to 5. So I love that you're leaning into something else as well as the full-time thing, which I know you probably love that as well.
I do. I love that. I have a very diverse group of clients. And again, I'm building my ideal life, which is only working with clients that really amaze me and that we have a good working relationship and that it's easy for me. And that's not a lazy thing. If it's easy for you, likely you've got some skill at it and some interest in it. And it's every once in a while I want to pinch myself about how well it's all going. And it's funny, I said to my sister the other day, I said, I mean, it's like a miracle how my life has unfolded here. And then I literally stopped myself and I went, wait a minute. Actually, the miracle is build after build after build after learning, after honing, after directing, after searching, after, refining. Everybody can do that. Please don't think I'm saying I'm some multi-million-dollar conglomerate. That's not it. But the satisfaction I have in what I do every day is off the charts. And that to me is...
Well, what's encouraging too is you went and you're taking it yourself, right?
Yep.
It's like to find happiness, or again, back to quotes. I read a quote once, and it was basically about the standard 9 to 5 worker. You're working to make someone else rich, right, or make somebody else's their dream come true. And when I read that, I'm like, well, what about my dream, right? Like I'm sitting here and doing this thing for XYZ company to help their bottom line, and they're getting something from me, right? But what about, like, I'm helping that CEO and that bottom line and those investors. What about what I want? So you're doing that, which I think is encouraging. And I love having conversations with you because I get encouraged by it.
Good. I like to hear that.
Yeah, you're taking what you want out of this life. You're going after it, right?
I am. But after talking to you, I'm going to burn a boat or two.
Oh, okay. There we go.
I'm telling you, I mean, I think that's the thing is when somebody lights your soul on fire when you chat, keep chatting. When something holds your interest, keep being interested. When you find that you're having success at something, keep going. And then the reverse is true. If you're bored out of your mind, if somebody sucks the life out of you in a conversation, if you're struggling way beyond a reasonable amount of time, pivot.
Yeah.
Pivot. Adjust your sails.
There we go.
And go a different direction. And that's up to everybody. Our conversation can't force that on anybody. But somebody hearing it, I guarantee, is going to adjust their sails or take a baby step or write a book for 5 minutes a day, even if it's for a decade.
Yeah. I think that's when I think about like younger generations, specifically Gen Z, there's some, generations, you can admire some things, not admire some things. I think what I love about Gen Z and what they're forcing of millennials and others is to see the world differently. And I'm encouraged by that. Why people would suggest, oh, that's laziness or that's this, that, or another. I do very much, again, being on TikTok and seeing how people are just going after what they want and not, I was sold the idea that you go to college, you get a degree, white picket fence,
right?
You get a job, everything is happy, go lucky, whatever that is. And then you realize, oh, well, that might have been that reality, but that's not my reality. And so I guess where I'm going with this is the younger generations now, I think what they're teaching me is to pursue that happiness, right? To pursue that thing, whether it's opening up a bakery because that makes me happy, right? And it's not all about material things and having 5 cars and 2 summer homes, et cetera. It's just about finding the joy in that. I love that right now.
Love it too.
Yeah.
As long as you're a good baker.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, there's little caveats there.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're close to the end of our time, but I want to leave you with something if I can.
Yeah.
I had a woman on my show, and I cannot remember her name, and I do apologize for that. But she wrote her thesis on what it's like to be wrong. When you don't know that you're wrong, it feels very good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
But when you discover that you're wrong and you're really wrong, it's kind of humbling. And what led her to write this thesis is she was taking a cross-country trip with her friend after college graduation, a road trip. And they were driving along all the expressways and talking and listening to music and just having a grand old time. And as they'd be talking, occasionally she'd see these signs that kind of made her wonder, like, but she didn't have a good break in the conversation to say anything. But she kept seeing these symbols on the road. And she was like, what the heck is this? And they were in multiple states. And she was just like, so strange. So finally, after days on the road with her friend, she said to her, what is with all of these Asian symbols on the road? Have you seen them? And her friend's like, wait, what? Asian symbols? Mm-hmm. Show me. Well, she finally passed one. It was the picnic logo.
Oh, no way. Like the picnic table.
But she spent 3 days wondering why there were Asian symbols scattered all over the freeway. And she realized she was wrong. So that is like, to me, I thought that was one of the greatest stories I had ever heard. How many times do we make these assumptions, or we see something and we misinterpret it, or we hear it, or we experience it, and we really didn't get it right or how it was intended, and we live our life. But if you discover that you're wrong, it's really a game changer in my mind. I don't know. I hope that impacted you the way it impacted me. To just be so sure that the world has lost its mind. It's just picnics.
Yeah. What do you do with that?
I think you stop and realize you could be wrong about all kinds of things. And the picket fence, the house, all that might not be the answer for everybody. But you have, not you in particular, society has sort of brought that in to be the belief, and it might be wrong. Or some of the beliefs that we've had about genders or races or cultures. We could be wrong about a lot of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that our job as people is to challenge some of these beliefs and conditionings and be open to the fact that we could be wrong multiple times every day.
That is so profound.
You were like, I do not even know what to say to that.
No, it is, but only because I'm thinking on it, not because I have a thought or feeling right away on it. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I got to keep talking because we're recording, but now I'm really mulling that over.
I think you should. I know I did. It really got me.
Yeah.
And it would have been better had I been able to hold up the sign like I do in speeches, because then you would be like, oh my God, I get it. You know what I mean? But you could see why she would think she was wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, why she would think that it was Asian symbols.
Oh yeah. 'Cause right when you said it, the picnic tables, I was like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of what the image of that is.
Right.
Because if you turn that on its side, I could see how it even more looked like an Asian symbol or kanji or something like that.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Is this when we go, turn this off?
I'm taking that one with me. So what, maybe in closing here, I love just with your experiences, your life experiences, your mentorship, starting your companies, etc. For young people, for myself, what are some words of encouragement in regards to like taking a next step, right? Say somebody's sitting on an idea right now, or they want to take a risk. How would you encourage them? And you can act like you're speaking to me.
There you
in
go.
This example, right? But what?
That's a good one. It's hard to sum up really quickly, and everybody's circumstances are different. And I don't want to be reckless with anybody. I don't want to give people a match and tell them to burn every boat or bridge. But I think the biggest thing is just take the step. Take a step, a little step, a baby step. Whether it be, I'm going to think about what I might call my company. Just start to ideate that. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to think about who might be able to help me with this. Who do I need to have lunch with? Or what do I need to read? Or who can help me with this? But I think the biggest thing is action, some kind of action. I have a big to-do list every day, and it's ridiculous. And in fact, I'm kind of trying to train myself into shrinking my to-do list to make it more efficient. And Tim Ferriss has a saying that I love, which is the to-don't list.
Yeah, there we go. I know a name you mentioned.
There you go. The to-don't list to me is so great. And so I think it's, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? And take a little step every day. If finances are going to be an issue, you got to, if you're really talking about a great big change in career, did I hear you correctly on that? So, if somebody's thinking about, okay, I'm going to bail and start my dream, you do have to get some housekeeping done first. You can't be reckless. But all of a sudden, delivering pizzas for 6 months because that's going to help you reach your goal becomes a little bit more palatable, doesn't it? Like, if there's a means to an end. I would read anything by Simon, I never know if I say his last name right, Sinek. Oh, him. Leaders Eat Last. And
he's all over TikTok.
He's great.
Yes. I know.
Read anything by him. But take it in stock. I just think take a step. Here's a quote for you. Martin Luther King, have faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, but take the first step.
Yeah.
And little teeny tiny steps.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, that resonates with me in regards to, I bought a whiteboard, a giant whiteboard in the office upstairs, and just little check marks and boxes for, again, it doesn't have to be a big swing, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be, I don't know what the analogy of not a big swing. It can be a bunt. Whatever. If I'm using a baseball analogy, I don't know. It doesn't have to be a home run every time. But
Right.
if each day stacks, and it's just like compound interest, right? It stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. One
That's
day
a
you wake up,
beautiful analogy.
there's $1 million in the bank. It's like, but you took tiny steps along the way. So I love that.
If
That
I
resonates.
achieve my goal of becoming the next chicken soup for the soul, I have to talk to you about a better title. You'll know that I'm living proof that I did this every day for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I did it from a place of the truest truth and purest intention, which is out of love to my kids. And, I think that's the other thing. Check your intention. If you just want to make a bunch of money, here's a little Wayne Dyer thought for you. He had a great question. He would say, how would you feel if you won the lottery? And I'm asking you that right now.
How would I feel if I won the lottery? I think the number one thought would be excitement. I would say I've seen historically how people who win the lottery, they aren't happy, they blow the money, or there's people who, I've read they've committed suicide after winning the lottery, right? So
Right.
It's like, I don't think it would let me to, take care of the kids and the family and like those things so I could go chase the thing that I really wanted. So I think it would take out some of the risk. I don't know.
Right.
Like, that's my first gut reaction.
That's good. That wasn't helpful to my story, but that was good.
Hold on. What did you want me to say? I'll say it.
Well, most people would be like, "Oh my God, I'd be free. I'd quit my job.
yeah.
Oh my God, I know you're telling the harsh realities of the lottery, but Wayne's point is there are a lot easier ways to achieve the feeling you're after than the extreme.
Yeah.
So if people are looking for more satisfaction in their work, let's just say, but they can't afford to say, I'm out of here. I'm not just burning the boat, I'm burning the bridge. Good day to you. They might find another way to add satisfaction. You're doing it right now with your podcast.
Right.
So, those baby steps in finding the life you want might not always be just in your employment and just in your career. So keep an eye out for anything.
Right.
And then just, to me, follow it. Like, what is this going to do, to your big picture? This is passionate for you. This is something you love to do. Time stands. I don't even know what time it is. I mean, we're enjoying this, right?
I'm watching our time for you. We're good.
Okay, good. Yeah. But you know what I'm saying? Time stands still. Whereas if I asked you to, I don't know, stack oranges in a crate, you might be watching the clock.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just looking for any chance to do what makes you come alive and then keep going. And ultimately, I believe it really will take you in the direction of what you do for a living.
Yeah.
I believe that with all my heart. And just as you said, with such confidence about you've been through some stuff and so I know this.
Yeah.
I know this.
That's why I'm always convicted after we talk, whether the couple times we have or through a chat or an email or something like that. I walk away with great conviction and inspired. And it's like a quote. It's like reading a quote, but talking with Amy. And I do feel re-energized. And
I love to hear that. Well, that's how I try and start my kids. And, it's funny. My son started sharing his mom's daily wisdoms at work.
Really?
And a couple days, I've missed a handful of days. If I've been traveling internationally or if I'm ill or something like that, I've missed a day or two, but not many. But one morning he sent me a text. He goes, Mom, the guys at work are saying, where's Mama T's wisdom? And I was so touched by that. And I thought, this is a universal thing that people need this. Mm-hmm. And what you put in is what comes out. So
I think now more than ever, I shouldn't say more than ever. I think it's that introspective look at things and just slowing down. I think that thing too, just the culture, go, to actually slow down and read something and to take some time to think about it, what it means to you, how it makes you feel, how it moves you. That sounds so simple. It's not a simple thing nowadays,
it's
right?
Not, is it?
Go. So again, I love that. I also love quotes and just sitting in it and just like letting it roll over me and feeling it.
Yep.
Even if it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And what a great, I was going to say this before. How many kids do you have?
Two. Daughter and a son.
What a great gift for them. And so when you think about it, and I'm not trying to go this way, but like the legacy that you'll leave behind or the gifts you'll leave your children, right? There's photos, there's things, but this is just one other thing. And how cool for your children, for your children's children. Like
I hope so.
I don't know how it's not.
Jordan, that I have to tell you that is one of, so I've written a life vision for myself. And if you haven't, I suggest you do. It's really a great thing to do. And I kind of burnish it every year, but it's all encompassing. It's every element, every follicle of a human life. And I don't read it every day, but I read it a couple times a month to remind myself and to, but I want to leave a legacy for my kids. Well, obviously I want to leave a financial legacy,
sure,
but I also want to leave something that's more like how you feel when you win the lottery. It's a feeling as much as it is the cash. And I imagine sometimes when I let myself that, a great grandchild or a great great grandchild who never met me, it might be a rite of passage in a family legacy, and that means a whole lot to me. It really does. I think that everybody has a reason for being, and I know mine has something to do with encouragement. Mm-hmm. And, I try and keep it that right side of not being too preachy. In fact, I said to the kids as I send them my amended quote every day now with my things added, I said, you guys are sort of editors against your will, but you got to make sure if I'm ever sounding preachy or, and they keep telling me, no, it's human, it's real, it's good. And so I keep going, but I do love it. You'll have to subscribe.
I was about to say, how do I get added onto this?
So I'm not going to send everybody a text in the morning, but I am putting it on my site, which is amy-tobin.com.
Okay.
And so I'm starting, and I guess, who told me to do that too is Nick Dew.
Yeah.
One of your guests.
You sign up for a newsletter, right?
Yep.
You're creating
exactly
a customer, a lead. I shouldn't even say that.
Yeah.
A human connection.
Exactly. And actually a lot of them will be on the blog. The newsletter will include things a little bit more than my maiden voyage on my newsletter is June. I say maiden voyage. You need to know I had a newsletter that was, 15 years long that was very popular. So I sort of picked up after taking a full-time launching of a bourbon brand.
Yes.
I picked back up into where I really sit in my skin, which is what I'm doing now.
Oh, you could set up SMS text messages to people.
I need to hire you.
Yeah, you could do that. That'd be great. Then people get a daily text.
Yeah.
You could turn your site into an app, and then you could have push notifications coming to people's phone.
Don't give everybody all the... No, I'm kidding. I have to be generous, right? No, but that's it. There's something here. And the good thing about it is I'm not selling French fries. I'm selling something that might cause you to have a better day.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes me have a better day every single day, just interacting with it.
I love that. I'm encouraged by you. Thank you.
Yay!
Again,
I'm encouraged by you from the very moment we met. From the very moment we met.
We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
I walked away feeling energized. I think it came home and told my wife, I'm like, I just had the most amazing conversation.
I said the same thing. And I think, that's the thing. When you find people like that, don't walk away.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's great feedback, because I feel like after our conversations, I kind of went back into myself or whatever. Again, going back to I'm really playing out TikTok here, but it's all these quotes and things. It's surround yourself with people that you want to be like, or you want to emulate, right?
Energy is contagious.
Right. So it's, I'm finding myself right now in life where friends will always still be friends, but we're in different life stages. And I think about where I want to go and people that bring me energy, and surrounding myself with those people. And those people might not be the people that I grew up with or my childhood friends. It doesn't mean I don't love them and care for them.
Oh, exactly.
But I'm in a shifting mode right now where I'm trying to really pull towards people that also have the same energy, same ambition, same things. Because, oh my gosh, when you sit and have if you could sit and have a conversation like this every day with somebody else, whatever, and that just brings you energy, how could you not win? How could you not move forward and feel inspired?
Exactly. And inspire that other person as well. Bruce Feiler, who coined the phrase life quakes, and I mentioned I had him on my show and that we'd come back to him. He wrote a book called The Council of Dads, and you likely have never heard of it, which makes sense because he wrote it before you were probably even thinking about being a dad. But Bruce received a medical diagnosis. He thought he was going to die, and he had young children. And that flattened him. Mm-hmm. He's like, I had so many plans as a father, and I'm paraphrasing for this wonderful man, so please don't quote me that I'm speaking for him. But so what he did was he thought about all the things he would have taught his children. He needed somebody who was great taking them fishing and through the woods because that was important to him. He needed somebody who was going to give them a good moral fortitude because that was important to him. He needed just a fun, rough and tumble dad who was going to, wrestle with them or all the things he wanted to be. There were 12 facets of himself that he wanted to pass on. So he searched his friend base, deep and thorough, and he pulled together 12 men who agreed to be the Council of Dads.
That gave me goosebumps.
I know.
That's pretty neat.
I'm surprised you didn't weep. Maybe I'll pinch you and you will.
No.
But yeah, so I mean, it's the most beautiful thing. Well, Bruce lived. But this Council of Dads is the most beautiful thing I think I've ever heard. And we all need a Council of Dads for ourselves, I think. Mm-hmm. Who's that friend that you just laugh until you cry with?
Right.
My sister, I can't walk down a street with her without one of us almost doubling over, crying, laughing. Mm-hmm. We are laughing partners, Yeah. And I've got friends that kind of push me a little, and that's good. And I've got friends that envelop me when I need to be enveloped. And I've got, I think you almost have to look at what's important to you. And do you have a friend that matches that? Mm-hmm. Do you have someone that matches that? And you deserve your own Jordan's Council of, I don't know what.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. And probably something I'm going to go, I've been doing writing, right? When we think about manifesting or writing or just writing things down, I think that's great to think about, okay, out of my network of friends, who makes me feel what's the value exchange, or what's the thing that they bring to the table and I bring, I don't know I'm saying it all wrong.
No, but you're at the edge of an idea that you're going to go deeper on and you're going to say it all right.
Correct. Yes. Yep. It's just what do each one of those people have? What's their special sauce? Right. And how, and what that looks like. And when I need to tap into things or they need to tap into me for things, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to solve it right here as we're talking.
But it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about. Have you heard of the life wheel? Mm-mm. So a life wheel is a pie. And another gentleman I had on my show. See, I've only talked about 2 culinary people and the rest are not, which is why I said I can't be just culinary. Keith Ferrazzi. Have you heard of him? He's a pretty great business guy. And he wrote a book called...
You're smarter than me.
No, I'm not. I'm older than you. I'm older than you, and I had 4 authors a week on a show for 20 years.
So I will say no again, but it doesn't mean anything.
Well, he wrote a book called Who's Got Your Back? And it's a really good book. It's about at work, who's got your back? Who are the relationships, and what do you have to do to I should have a reading list. I'll send you a little reading list.
Yeah, we can add it on
A book
here.
club.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the things, he did not create the life wheel. I think it's been around forever. But he takes a personal retreat every January, and he looks at his year ahead, and he looks at the life wheel. And it's a pie chart, if you will, that you divide into things that are important to you. There are many universal ones that are out there: career, health, family, finances, the usual things. And you measure yourself from a score of basically 0 to 10. So your finances might be a 3. Oh man, I've got to earn more money this year. And your career, therefore, might be low 2. Maybe it's high. I shouldn't be trying to build a life wheel. You get the idea. Yeah. And then you think about each element of where you want to work at it. So in my book, one of the things I'm thinking about adding is this idea of it's a daily reader, right? Of having this life wheel and having these quotes and essays kind of guide you in that direction. And therefore, I'm not telling you what to do. You're measuring yourself. You're thinking about yourself. But you have a way to think, to organize your thoughts.
Yeah. I think that's great.
I think it would be cool.
Oh, I do too. I'll just affirm that thought as you're saying it, and I'm like, you're leading to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. I know where this is going. That's so great.
Yeah. So a life vision and a life wheel and all these ways to be able to take, because for me, I'm such a glutton for ideas. I love them, that they can be overwhelming and sort of hard to
triangulate.
Yeah. And so having these things like a life wheel and these, my life vision are very helpful to me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited for your book. Do you have it? Is there a date? Is there anything yet that we can?
It has got to be ready to go by next May, because I have a little less than a year. And I know I can do it. I mean, it's basically written. And I may end up self-publishing, but I don't think so. I think there's still something to be said. First of all, I like to support bookstores as opposed to just selling it out of a trunk. And, Amazon is an option. But I really am going to explore not only what my consultant is telling me, but also what James Clear is talking about.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm working on it. So
I'm excited for it.
Thank you. I am too. It feels like it's important for me to do for myself.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's great having you on. Again, the website,
amy-tobin.com, and you can find me on social too.
Yeah, great. A lot of great book recommendations here too. So
yes.
I'll get some of those links from you and maybe link them in the podcast as
Good
well,
deal.
so others can look them up. And I clearly need to educate myself on more people.
I have a ridiculous resource simply from what I did.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
I had a moment there. I was like, Jordan, come on, be more than that. So, well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, and I'm so glad to be here, and I can't wait to see where this goes for you.
Thank you. All right, have a good one.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Turn This Off. We love people, and we love talking to people to hear their stories, the journeys, the struggles, and the triumphs. From athletes to artists, from scientists to CEOs, anyone who brings something unique to the table. Who knows? Maybe you'll be our next guest. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you got something from it. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at Turn This Off Podcast. And by the way, thanks for not turning it off. See you next time on Turn This Off.